Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Folklore Podcast. I'm Mark Norman, folklore researcher and author. In the very first episode of this 10th anniversary season of the podcast, we revisited the classic TV series The 10th Kingdom and spoke with its writer, Simon Moore. At that time, I said that I hoped that I would be able to return with a follow-up episode, as we were hoping to be able to secure Scott Cohen, the actor who played Wolf, to come and talk with us. And I'm happy to say we did. Scott is an actor and a producer with a long and varied career, who you might have recently seen on your TV in the new HBO miniseries The Penguin, in which he plays Luca Falcone. He's also known for the character of Max Medina on The Gilmore Girls and film roles with actresses such as Angelina Jolie and Natalie Portman. When not in front of the camera, Scott has appeared in and produced a number of stage plays. In this interview with Hilary Wilson, Scott discusses his career, his thoughts on genre fiction in the world of fairy tales and beyond, and, of course, the 10th Kingdom.
Hi, this is Hilary Wilson here with the Folklore Podcast, and today I'm being joined by Scott Cohen. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Hillary. I'm happy to be here.
So would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners who might not be familiar with you?
Sure. My name is Scott Cohen, like Hillary said. I'm an actor. I have been in quite a number of television shows and movies over an almost 40-year career. Probably best known for TV shows like The 10th Kingdom, which was a big fantasy miniseries, The Gilmore Girls, The Other Woman with Natalie Portman, NYPD Blue, The Penguin that just recently came out, and many, many, many others. Theater, film, television. I produce some, I direct some, and my whole life is basically has to do with the film world, with the theater world.
That is a long career and a long time to be in it with a lot of massive changes happening within the field.
Yeah, yeah. You don't really, I think, I try not to pay attention too much to what changes because it affects me directly. And if I get too involved in what is changing, um, not in a positive way, I tend to negatively spin. And so
Yeah.
it doesn't help me to necessarily think about, um, what is that, what's happening, what is a trend at the moment, what's not a trend, what's moving forward, what's not moving forward, what's moving backwards, what's not moving backwards, all those things that I think really kind of stop any kind of creative process. And I think it's important to kind of hold on to that more than anything else.
I can understand that. And, you know, as much as things do change, a lot of things also remain the same within it. I
Yeah,
mean,
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think that like there's a definitively very real aspect that the industry, as we kind of like, it's what their words like the business, the industry, whatever, that we're in has slowed down quite a lot in the last couple of years, and we had two strikes and we had COVID
yeah,
and all this stuff. But like if you really think about the amount of content that has been available to people in the last 10 years compared to 10 years prior to that, it's like, I mean, it's exponential. So when you think about what's slowing down, is it slowing down or is it just kind of like, because I remember when there was nothing. There's, it's less now, but there was, it was few, in addition, few and far between, so it's, I think you have to take it with a certain kind of realization that maybe that an actor or whoever needs to move in some other direction or to keep your kind of creative juices alive, as things kind of work themselves out, I guess you could say. But it's at the same time not pay attention so much so that it is dictating your life. Otherwise, you're not doing anything.
Yeah, one of the interesting things that's been happening recently is, and I don't think it's really coinciding, with the bit of slowdown that happened with COVID and life, but there's been a resurgence in interest with a lot of older media. So there's at least 3 different podcasts I can think of off the top of my head that are reviewing each episode of the Gilmore Girls and reanalyzing them, and just a huge glut of new appreciation for it. As well as for the 10th Kingdom, where people are starting to, new generations are finding this media, older generations are, really starting to analyze it. Not exactly in a more critical way, but, in a bit of a more academic manner. What do you think it is about shows like that they have such a, long afterlife?
Well, I do think that part of an afterlife has to do with what the media has to offer now. So I think that the idea that there are podcasts and that there's YouTube and whatever other social media you could think of, really, or not just social media, but content platforms. That there's the ability to do that, right? So I think that's a huge part of it. But I also think that and I just think that there are certain properties that are long lasting, and I think that they are long lasting for reasons. That I think Gilmore Girls will be long lasting for a long time, because I think it deals with topics that are very present day, that continue to be present day. They deal with very things that just living life, just being part of the human condition. These are things that have happened in the Gilmore Girls that people can relate to. And I think that there are enough characters in the Gilmore Girls that everybody could relate to someone, right? Yes. And so that's great. And I think in terms of fantasy miniseries or fantasy series, I think I think those are more kind of like, it goes, I mean, not necessarily like science fiction, which probably has a longer life, but I think fantasy kind of has peaks and valleys as to where society is at the moment and what they kind of need or want to kind of either forget about what's happening in the world. And if the world is like so chaotic and so confusing and so much, then, people need things that kind of take them away for a minute. And I think that, I personally think that the 10th Kingdom did exactly that. I think that it dealt with real things that people really do. And that's why I think it's so long lasting, is that it deals with, deep human connection and deep, whether it be mother-daughter or father-daughter or romantic liaisons or revenge or all these things that play out in life, but they're done in a way that you don't need to be totally affected by it. It brings hope and faith and enjoyment and entertainment, I think, in a certain way. So it kind of lightens the load, if you will. So that's why I think that. So those two aspects: one, the everlasting life of them, and also because it doesn't happen with every show, but it's like and also the idea that people have the ability to do that.
Yeah, and I think there's also the interesting aspect that those 2 pieces of media were also more strongly focused on the female characters, which is something that just isn't as present throughout a lot of media. The family connections, the mother-daughter connection is something that every now and then a property will try to really dig deep with, but it's just not as present as more traditional stories.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was, I mean, I never really watched it, but like Once Upon a Time, right, which is a big fantasy series. To me, that might have a long afterlife because it's kind of fantasy, but to me, it never had the center that I think either the 10th Kingdom or Gilmore Girls, something like Gilmore Girls, has. And I think the center being like that exact thing, that it focuses on a woman's story, and it's without being apologetic, and I think that's what's most important, because it that's what's going to mean most in the long run. That's what I think gives it life. And yeah, so I completely agree with that. And I think when people don't do that, when people kind of try to focus on the idea of what is that there's a I don't know, more plot driven concept, right? Something that's more kind of procedural in a certain way.
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't find it doesn't have that center. It doesn't have that anchor that you kind of can relate to for a long time. So
yeah, I think that fairy tales in general, like genre fiction, but fairy tales more so, has the ability to tell those kinds of familial stories in very complex ways. I mean, when you actually treat genre fiction as a serious medium, there's a lot that you can dig into with it. That's something that people are really realizing with a property like The Penguin, where you can tell these dramatic stories.
Unbelievable. I mean, I actually, I don't know about you, but I loved The Penguin. So I thought that one of the things about The Penguin that I loved so much about this series was the ability to tell a story that no one really knows in the context of characters that everybody knows. And I was like, wow, this is kind of crazy that people like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
And I found that really fascinating. And I thought really what it was about in terms of kind of being some kind of origin story of the Penguin, or an origin story of Sophia. I'm spacing out the last name. Maroney. No, Maroney's the other family. I forget. Scott Cohen.
Yeah.
My character's name. Is that I just found that fascinating. I thought that was really and that the characters actually have that kind of space. Like that's kind of interesting too. Like it's really interesting. I mean, the Tenth Kingdom is like that too. I mean, you'll read the book, but you'll see that it really can stretch. Like it has characters that could really kind of, you can develop other characters from it, and you could kind of develop the characters in it, and there's a million ways to go. And I think great stories are capable of doing that.
Yeah, I think part of the strength of working within the genre space is the fact that people are coming in knowing the characters to a degree. So, like, if you step into the world of the Penguin, you're familiar with the Penguin. He's one of the very iconic characters of Batman's Rogues Gallery. Stepping into the Tenth Kingdom, you have these preconceived notions about the characters as well. We all grow up with the big bad wolf. We all grow up knowing these fairy tales. So then to have that in your head and to have the characters actually taken seriously and played with in a dramatic fashion, I think that that's powerful, because you already have that idea, so you can subvert it, you can twist it around. It grips you because you can step into the world more easily, I
think. I completely agree with that.
And it's also interesting because the Tenth Kingdom, like you were saying, it was playing with these serious ideas. It was treating it just the way it deserves to be treated, as a dramatic story, as real characters. In a time when genre fiction was something that wasn't taken as serious. I think that now we're starting to realize that there is more to be, told. Like, I grew up with comics. The comic book writer Grant Morrison. Are you familiar with him at all? Scottish comic book writer, had the idea that a lot of these superhero stories, they are our generation's, our current world's idea of the gods, like the Greek pantheon. You say the idea of Zeus, you have an image in your head. You say the idea of Superman, you have an image in your head. And so we retell these stories over and over of these epic battles between these characters, because that's our modern mythology. And I think that that's true to a degree, because these are all archetypes we can draw on.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I'm actually uh I really got into Gladiator, the Gladiator 2, and I was really into Gladiator 1, but my wife really kind of helped me dissect Gladiator 2, and I was so fascinated that I have gone through I'm going through Homer, and I'm going through Virgil,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going through what's interesting to me, and because I actually think I'm in a stage of my life where I feel like we're so conditioned to experience things as we are told to experience them. I drive down a road and every house is square.
Yep.
I'm like, why is every house square? Like, who told us to do it like that, right? And it's like, is that the best way to structure it? And then I think to myself, every house, like, how come houses don't have how come houses aren't made out of windows? Like, how come there's no light that gets in a house, right? It's like it's so hard to get light in the house. So everybody gets depressed and everybody's sad all the time. And it's like everybody just wants to get out of the house because they want sun. But like, how come it was, and so, but I feel like we're conditioned to think these things, just like we are conditioned to understand that the Aeneid and the Iliad and the Odyssey and Ulysses and Aeneas and all these characters and all these stories are great Western canon literature, right? But then you're saying what you're saying, which is our modern mythology is our comic books. And why are we not? Is it not the same? It's exactly the same. And so, I mean, were they not the comic books of yore? Were they not?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it's like, I mean, and so instead of and I think it's important. Like I'm reading the Aeneid, and like I actually I'm in the beginning, and there's this whole page of how Aeneas, I don't know if you know this story at all, but how Aeneas is introduced, and how we see, and it is like it's like he's Superman. It's
Yep.
like he's described as, it's like he's fucking big and he's muscular and he's handsome and he's this and that. And you're just like, oh my God, this is like, I mean, if this was a graphic novel, if this was, I mean,
it's perfect, right?
Yeah, perfect. But I do think that we're conditioned, and that's one of the reasons that I actually think this is one of the reasons that Gilmore Girls as well, but for purposes of just having Simon in my brain and the 10th Kingdom in my brain, I do think that was one of the things that Simon was capable of doing that was so genius of him, which is that he flipped this story on its head and really took fairy tales that we all know and changed them in order for us to see something else. And I mean, because my attraction to the 10th Kingdom, and it will always be this, is the mother-daughter relationship.
Yeah.
That is the most interesting relationship to me in that show. And it's because I think it's the most challenging. I think it's the most interesting in terms of how he changed the fairy tale to be about this. Like that, to me, it's absolutely genius. And it made us look at the world, not of the fairy tale, but it made us look at the world of these particular characters in a way that other people can relate to these fairy tales, right? And so, and really, he used wolf in a certain sense in that way too. I mean, because it wasn't the big bad wolf. It was a forlorn, lusting, passionate, driven, mate for life character. I mean, which you don't really see that. So it's anyway. So yeah. Anyway, that's.
Yeah, I mean, you have at the core of Wolf's character as well, he is rebelling against his parents, in a sense. There is that tortured relationship there, that gets drawn on a little bit with his conversation with the therapist in the first episode. So you have that parental tension, shall we say?
Yeah.
There, although it doesn't get delved into too deeply, which I think was always an interesting thing in the background.
Yeah, that actually is a really interesting thing.
Yeah, the thing about the
I actually think that's a very interesting thing that I thought about a lot when I did it. We have talked about it in certain ways, because Simon both of us trying to do a sequel. It has come up like that. Like it has come up in terms of like where Werewolf came from and what is he actually fighting against and why. And that's a very that is an acting dilemma that can go on for a very, very long time. It's a very interesting very interesting thought.
One of the other things that I thought was pretty neat, which is something that we don't see all that often, was also the idea of the wolf cycle being tied to the moon the same way that a woman's
yeah, totally. I should have thought about that. Actually, that would have been a good, like, don't you understand?
Yeah, it's something that very rarely comes up within fiction, but seems so obvious on the surface.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. That's good. I like that.
Yeah, what has kept you going back to the 10th Kingdom for so long? I mean, it's not every show that ends up with a sequel 20 some years later.
Yeah, well, we have been trying to get it done pretty much right afterwards. Like we were very, very I remember having a phone call with Simon outside of my parents' house. Actually, I was like, we have to do this. And I think at that time he was, he was kind of like we were both doing other things, and so it wasn't as present. And then over time, it became more present. And then we worked really hard for a long time just to pitch it, and nobody was really interested, or I should say, not that nobody was interested. We couldn't get the rights from the people that own it. So that's always a really difficult situation, because you can't, if they don't want to do anything with it, they want to lock it up in a library somewhere for whatever reason. They want to lock it up in a library. But now we have found someone who is supportive, and so we're hoping that will go to the next level, and we'll see.
Yeah,
but I would do it in a second. I think that I would love to play this character again and see where he is 25 years on.
I would love to see it too, and I know a lot of people really would. It doesn't seem like interest in the 10th Kingdom has really died off at all. It seems like it's only grown over the years.
Yeah, I think it has. I mean, our European counterparts, there is such a huge fan base in Russia, in Ukraine, interestingly enough, Germany. I get a lot of fan mail from Iran. It's weird. I mean, it's yeah. So I think it's out there. I totally think it's there to be had. I think more so though, it's like, it's not really just the fan base that's important. What's important is that you have people who believe in it, that because it's like, there's fan base for everything. It's like, but and that doesn't necessarily mean that something's going to be a hit. That it's going to be successful if you try to do it again, right?
Yeah.
I think what's most important is that Simon wants to tell a story, right? And people are willing to hear what that story might be. Not audience necessarily, but like studio, right? Like people that have money that want to do that. And so, fingers crossed.
Yeah. Knock on wood.
Knock on wood.
I think that, I think that it's the right time for it. I was, talking to Simon about that, But the success of things like Game of Thrones, which was the hugest show in the world for a long time and was fantasy. The success of Once Upon a Time, Wicked out in theaters right now, it's doing numbers. Like I,
Billions.
yeah, I mean, I think that there's a huge interest with fairy tales, and I think that people are drawn to these stories for a lot of different reasons. And a story, like that of the Tenth Kingdom, which, it has humor, it has a lot of fun with it, and then it hits you with some of the most interesting psychological, drama that you can see. Like I think that is, I think it's the right time for something like
From your mouth to God's ears.
that. Yeah. What is it that you like about the character of Wolf? What drew you to him?
I really his complication. I mean, his 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 great um, his lust of life, which I found utterly contagious and appealing, and um, that there was nothing that barred him from anything. Like if there, it was impetuous and it was impulsive and it was whether it be right or wrong made no difference. It just was. And so I loved that. That really appealed to me. And 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 his energy was vast and it was meaningful and it was from experience and and mature in so many ways, right? Because he has witnessed the world and he has witnessed pain and he has witnessed sacrifice and loss and
Yeah.
um, so I think that and lives in a world with such hope and faith and magic, right? But knows that how easily that could turn on one and how and at the same time I mean I think that he was a great middleman. He was able to kind of put himself in positions where his ability um to play both sides was important and um but he did it so authentically that you know it wasn't like he was just trying to con everybody out of everything. It was like it was all about survival instinct.
Yeah.
And so it was those are the things that were really appealing to me, that attracted me. And and I saw him right off the bat. I saw him as a human being. I didn't see him as an animal, and which I think helped me, like when he does really become a beast, you know um have that kind of like both the fear and the desire to become that, but know that what happens from that is could be so devastating and so treacherous, right? But nothing, not it doesn't. There's something that doesn't hold you back because for him it's natural, right?
Yeah.
But and that's okay. Like and that was the other thing that I think. Like I'm really interested in characters that make choices that that ultimately could be bad, right? But they're not bad people.
Yeah.
They just make bad choices, and I love characters like that. So those are the characters I love to play, um, because I think that we all make bad choices. But I think I would say most of us aren't bad people.
Yeah.
We just make stupid choices.
Yeah. It's a fascinating dichotomy where you have, Wolf who, has this lust for life, has this impulsivity that he's working with and working against, being paired with Virginia, who's trying to keep everything so in control and so under wraps. Like that's just a beautiful pairing, a beautiful dichotomy. You it's just very compelling, and I do wonder, what would happen, with them after the end of the story. How would Wolf do in the city?
Yes. Well, read the book
I will.
and you'll find out.
Yeah, I think that it's a great idea, like, and Wolf's willingness, to go there, to, explore New York City, this place that has these wonderful, wonderful self-help books.
Yeah, I mean that's actually very true. That's a good idea too. The book will probably change, and the series will change according to new ideas that people come up with. But it's this one of the things about Wolf going to New York, which I think is so important, which I agree with, is that there's a sacrifice to what he does, right? And he but I think that in his heart is like he could survive anywhere, right? It doesn't matter where he is, and that's what I think is because he doesn't need magic to be the way he the way he is. He's so sure of himself of who he is, not necessarily decisions that he has to make, but he's certain about what his likes are and his dislikes, and he knows who he is. He's not an idiot. But I think that's actually a really interesting point. Like, what it was like for him, and you'll see what happens and why it might have it might have been a little bit more a little better if the circumstances didn't happen the way they happened. But yeah. And if he wasn't so rageful, he has a problem with rage. So this gets in the way.
I mean, I think we all do to a certain degree.
Absolutely, no question. No question.
Yeah, especially now, I think that is something beneath the surface for a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of people.
And that's always interesting to see how that goes, even if sometimes we would rather not. But how do you see, genre fiction, continuing to grow and change? Because the success of The Penguin is definitely telling.
I am a terrible oracle. I can never tell you what, I have no idea. And I'm not a genre fiction guy. It's not like I don't go read, or I guess maybe I do. But I'm not I really don't know. I mean, I only know from what's on television, right, or what's in movies, which is it's huge.
Yeah.
And what are, like, if you look at any kind of youth, what do they call young adult novels section of a bookstore, it's chock full. There's so much. I actually looked up the woman who is the Harper Collins, the whatever you call it, the imprint that's Harper Collins that would deal with the 10th Kingdom. Mm-hmm. If you go on their website, the amount of material that is written for young adults is just, and series, not just one book, but multiple books. This is enormous. It seems like, I mean, if I could write one of those, I'd be like, I'm doing that. That'd be great. But it's it just seems like it's just really, really present. And I think that, I mean, I hope that the platform, the big screen platform stays. Like, I feel like that small screen, limited amounts of time, platform is neither good for the development of the brain in terms of what story could teach you, and the emotional life that it could bring you, and or books for that matter. I mean, it's like if people read books, then it's great, but I don't think it's very healthy. I think it's pretty toxic, actually. What we are whether you want to call it doom scrolling or whether, it's like, if we're just kind of like flipping through TikTok videos and Instagram videos, we're really not getting the full venting of story, of what story can possibly do. And I don't think that's being traditional or old school. I think it's really, and I'm sure in 50 to 100 years we'll see the effects of all that and what that means, really. And but I do think that if you look at where society is and kind of what's happening around the world, then I would say maybe what's happening in certain types of platforms are creating that type of movement as opposed to a more richer experience in the novel or the film. So the answer to your question is that I might not know really, but I hope that it continues and that it builds and builds in a way that's that supports people watching, listening, and reading good story. And not that story needs to be Aristotelian, not that story needs to be Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, but that it's but interesting story that challenges us and makes us understand that we're not alone, that represents us and represents more, the human, the soul, than it does the outside appearance of anybody, of any one person.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because there, it's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. How the limited series has gotten so much, popularity within television, where you're getting, maybe 10 episodes at most, of a series, and things are unfolding like a movie as opposed to like the 20 episode series where you had room to breathe and room to do silly episodes where you could, really learn more about the characters. There's something to be said, for the 10 episode, very tight story, but I do miss, having more time with the characters, having, more time to develop.
Yeah,
But
I'll tell you. I mean, in my humble opinion, and I would do any of those miniseries in a second. And but they're all dime store novels. They're all cheap. They're cheap. They're plot driven. They're mysteries. They're either revenge mysteries or they're cheating mysteries or they are murder mysteries. They are all the same. Nothing is different. And it's you could just place character. I mean, it really is. It's ridiculous. And it to me it's like I mean, it gives a lot of room for movie stars that there's fewer movies being made, so they could do these they could spend 3-4 months on a TV series and do it and then be done with it and get paid a lot of money. But it's and I'm being a little cynical here, but it's I think it's a detriment to what story could be. Mm-hmm. And it's I mean, it's just knocking out, and they're not even they're usually told from books, right? So they're not original stories, I mean, maybe True Detective, but even True Detective, which I actually think True Detective is fantastic, but it's like it was originally a novelist, right? That made the story, that created the story. So it's like, so it's not it's different. It's not like Gilmore Girls. It's not like it's not like Game of Thrones by any means, And I also think that it doesn't allow you to invest in a character that, I mean, when I was a kid, and even now, if if I watch a show and it's like 6-7 seasons of a show and that show ends, I'm devastated.
Yeah.
For like months. It's like you lost your best friend. And I think that's what is that bad? I think that's fantastic. It's like you've related to somebody. You have investment. You have I mean, this is what makes it's fulfilling and it's enriching and it's I think it's I just don't think I think it's bad. My own opinion.
Yeah, it's something that I've really been thinking about because you know my we've been rewatching some of the old Star Trek series, and having that room to breathe, with the episodes, it's a different experience. You get to see different aspects of the characters. You get to really connect with them on a fundamental level, and I really missed that, and that was part of the boon with Tenth Kingdom getting an hour and a half each time to tell the story. You know, it's it's fascinating because you also see how well movies like Dune did, with split into two parts, 3 hours each time, really getting to immerse yourself within the world. Even Wicked, with that being almost, over 2 hours long, longer than the play was for sure. You really get invested with these characters when you get more time with them. And
When is the second part come out of Wicked? Do you know?
next year, next December, I think, or
Oh,
this December, I mean.
oh.
Now it's 2025.
Yeah. I mean, that's great. I mean, that's the kind of thing I want to see. I mean, I want. I mean, I know a couple of people that like they're not happy with like these movies. There's so many movies now that are like 2.5 hours, 2:20, and I'm like, why? It's like I love being in the movie theater for over 2 hours. I mean, it's like now I really feel like I took the day, right?
Yeah.
It's like, or took the evening and, and I walk out and I'm thinking and I'm talking and it's a whole experience. It's not like an hour and a half of like, some, cheap shit that like, it's just, I saw that. Um, it's just, yeah, I think it's wonderful. I mean, and hopefully people will continue to go to the movies. I mean, I think for like Wicked, I think, thank God, man, my God, what a juggernaut. It's like, and that's, I hope more people do that and make money from it.
Yeah, I'm thinking that there will be some interesting trends as a result of how, well that's done. I think that Nosferatu is, doing some great numbers as well. And it shows that if you're invested with what you're making, you believe in what you're making, great things can come from it, even if it's a little bit unexpected.
Yeah, Nosferatu is a great point. I mean, one is shot in a very interesting format, right? And two,
Yeah.
it's gorgeous, right? It's shot so beautifully, but it's also it's a story everybody knows, right? And it's been done a number of times, and it's uh it's fantastic. And it's it's 1800s, and it's a simple horror. It's not even a horror movie. It is a horror movie, but it's not really a horror movie, right? And it's like, I mean, the only thing that's what I forget what I just remember the there's like a Geico commercial, I think it is, where it's like where everybody goes where the guy with the saw is like
Hmm.
in the garage and all the kids go to the garage. It's like and the guy with the saw is like, oh my God, he rolls his eyes like they always come to the stupidest place. It's like, why do people
Yes,
do
yes.
this? And then and it's like, and there was a scene in Nosferatu which I remember. I forget now which it was, but it's like, I think it was Lily Depp that went towards
Hmm.
something, and I was just like, why is she doing that? Like, don't wake up and move towards towards death. It's like, come on. But yeah, I mean, Robert Eggers, what a genius. And so it's like, you know, and people are, that's mythical, and that's really kind of God bless people like Willem Dafoe and Nicholas Hoult, and who I
Yeah.
thought, and Lily Depp, who I thought were quite real amazing in this movie. Um, and yeah,
Yeah.
So yeah, so I hope it all just continues. Even if it's like I'd rather see stuff like that. It's like, that's interesting to me, but these dime store novel shits, it's like I feel like it's such a waste of time.
Yeah.
I'd rather read it. I'd rather read it and feel like, oh, I'm actually increasing my vocabulary, right?
Yeah.
Instead of like, oh, this is a guessing game. Who murdered who, right?
Yeah, I think it's fun when you're able to read that stuff too. It's like a little treat,
Yeah,
you're
that feels like a little treat. But watching it, there's so many. It's like you could. There's so many. It's like you just turn
yeah,
on the
and now
TV. Yeah.
Christopher Nolan is doing the Odyssey, and there's rumors that Eggers is going to be remaking Labyrinth. And I think that I think that that is a positive sign, towards people moving more towards the mythological, moving more towards, these sort of epic fantasies that have a deeper meaning, within them, that are okay for children, but also, telling us something more, as we get older, which is something that I think the 10th Kingdom was so genius, because that's how fairy tales originally functioned. They had something for people of all ages.
Who's redoing the Odyssey?
Nolan, Christopher Nolan.
Christopher Nolan. Wow,
Yeah,
that's going to be amazing.
right. I think that has I think that's a very rich vein to mine. I mean, that that story is something that I go back to again and again. And I think that it's a beautiful time to be doing. That's something that it's timeless, but I think that journey of coming home, coming back to yourself is something that, we all could use. And I think that if it's true that Eggers is doing Labyrinth, um, that movie, the the idea of, growing up and the conflict of it, within a young girl is something that has aged in really interesting ways. I mean, everybody, thinks about David Bowie in it, what an amazing job he did, but I think that it's something that, could be done differently, and, could still resonate and create really interesting discussion.
I would completely agree with that. Yep.
Yeah, I think it
Yep.
has a nice little parallel to the 10th Kingdom in it as well.
Yeah, exactly. I was just thinking that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that, like, I personally feel like it's time for, society to revisit the 10th Kingdom in some really interesting ways. I think that it's the right time for it. I think we need that kind of fantasy. I think we need to be thinking about, these deep psychological questions about relationships, about the complexity of it all. And I think it could be told in a really interesting way. Just y'all just need another chance.
Hey, man. I love it. Yes, I agree. I agree.
Yeah, but what are you working on now?
I'm about
What's
I'm about to start this movie in New York. It's called Pocket Dream. With Stacey Martin. I don't know if you know her. She's a French actress.
mhm.
So that I'm working on that actually. Yeah. The That takes a lot of work. Actually, that's going to take a lot of work. Um, and I am producing and starring in a play of my wife's, Anna. And so that's going on right now. So those are the two things that are probably happening most immediately.
Looking forward to it all? Big plans for
Me?
the year? Yeah, you.
Yeah, totally looking forward to it all. I mean, it's all the movie is going to be hard. It's very challenging, but I'm looking forward to it. I have to get into the mindset. And the play I love, and hopefully that'll take off very soon.
That's
That
fantastic.
that's a that theater is a lot of that's really really hard work.
Yeah, theater is extremely rewarding. Being able to see the
It is.
reactions, as they
Yes,
happen.
yes,
There's honestly nothing like being on a stage.
No, nothing. Really fun.
Yeah. So what theater is it at?
We don't know yet.
Okay.
We're hoping that it's going to be. There are a couple of choices. There's a couple of theater companies that are kind of vying for it at the moment, and so we're hoping on that. And then, but it's off Broadway, so it's like the Lucy Lortel or the Connolly. We thought about, which are two great spaces. So we're seeing where we land.
Yeah, well, you'll have to let me know because I'll have to go and see it.
Sure.
That would be an excellent
Absolutely.
excuse to get back up there. And I miss the New York theater scene. It's fantastic.
I will totally invite you.
Yeah. So where can people find you online and keep appraised of what you're up to?
You could find me online at my website, which is Scott E. Cohen. .com.
Okay.
And so don't forget the E in the middle. So scottecohen.com. And that pretty much has not I constantly have to update it, but that's pretty much telling you what's happening. And other than that, you can just look me up online and find there's always something on the internet about something.
That's for sure. That's for sure. But we will, keep in touch and keep rooting for you. And hopefully there'll be more updates later on in the year.
Yes, keep me informed. Seems like it seems like you know more than me sometimes. So it's good.
But thank you so much for your time.
Yes, absolutely. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thanks for the conversation. It was great.
I'm delighted that we were able to bring Scott to the Folklore podcast to round off our look at the 10th Kingdom, and I thank him for taking the time to come on. You can find out much more about Scott and his work on his website, which is linked from the episode page for this episode on the Folklore podcast website and in the show notes. Next week, we'll be meeting British fantasy author Alexandra Beaumont, an award-winning writer with a passion for folklore and the Gothic. I hope you can join me for that. In the meantime, if you are in need of more Folklore podcast content, then why not head over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/thefolklorepodcast, where there's an extensive catalogue of material that you can access. You can join as a free member and enjoy our storytelling show, Stories from the Hearth, or select one of the low-priced paid tiers, which start at just £1 a month, to get access to other extras, including audiobook partworks, bonus mini episodes, videos, and more. Your support is vital to keeping the podcast going. It's been here for 10 years, and I have no desire to stop just yet. Finally, there are some opportunities coming up to win some of my books if you follow me on social media. When either the Facebook page or the Blue Sky account for the podcast reach 10,000 followers, then that will trigger a competition open to everyone who's there. So, if you don't follow either, now is a great time to start. Thanks for watching. See you next time.